Thank you so much for watching this presentation about crafting the perfect board. I got to tell you that in my career, I would never have been as successful as I've been if it hadn't been for the effort I took to work in creating a board that would be in unison with everything I was trying to do and accomplishing everything they wanted me to do. And so with that, I hope you'll really enjoy this presentation. It is so important to the success of everything that you're doing. At the end of the day, you want doers, not directors. You know, over all the years that I've been in this industry, I have seen so many boards where the tail is wagging the dog, which means we've got the board is running the organization rather than the staff or the executive director running the organization and the board of directors setting policy. I've also seen a lot of cases where there's a lot of board infighting, where people are there with different agendas and there's personality conflicts, and it really hampers the success of the organization. But then I've also seen board members that just go to show up. I guess they think it's great to be on their resume that they sat on the board, but it's kind of like they never pay attention. They just kind of attend meetings to attend meetings, and they're not really actively engaged. And the biggest one, of course, of all of those is where boards are running the organizations without any solid objectives, no real direction, other than survival of the organization. So what that means is every time they have a meeting, they talk about the organization and spend very little time on what the objective of the organization actually is. So it's always, well, we need to raise money, or we need to do this, or we're applying for grants, or we have a board or a member issue. And sooner or later, you got to get to what is the purpose of our organization. And that leads to ultimate failure until you do that. And so I've seen all of those. And I've also seen some great boards that have amazing teams, and they're all about getting it done. And that's what I want to leave you with today. So here is the conundrum. And I'm going to give you my real first experience working with a board directly. At the time, I was asked to go out to Ocean Shores, Washington, which is a town of about 2,500 people out on the Washington coast, about a 2.5-hour drive from Seattle. It's a beach town that at one point was bought by a developer for $1 million in like 1959, and they carved it into like 12,000 lots. And by the time I got there, they really needed help. You can see a lot of properties here. They carved this peninsula, which is 6,000 acres, into 23 miles of freshwater lakes and canals. They were having milfoil and other weed problems in these canals. And as you can see, hardly any of the lots are developed. So they were selling lots for like $500 or $595. I mean, in the early 60s. And the little red square you see up there is their commercial core. So that commercial core is supposed to carry the tax base, but it just wasn't happening. So in the early 80s, this was the situation. They had a marina down at the south end of this peninsula, and you can see none of the uplands had been developed at all. As a matter of fact, all the docks were literally sinking into the bay. I mean, it was a disaster in the making. And here you can see all these empty lots, so they had to maintain all these streets and everything. And they had 110 miles of roads. And of course, this is all a sandbar, so you can imagine there were shapes of logs in the middle of the road where the asphalt was sinking down. And so they were in a desperate situation. They needed to fix it. As a matter of fact, they needed $10 million in street repairs and replacement. They need $2 million in bridge replacement over these canals. They needed to put in a $60 million citywide sewer system. They needed to find additional fresh water sources, wells. Their lakes and canals were rated the worst in the state, and it wasn't. They were just full of weeds, and it was just a nightmare. Their fire equipment was like 1940s. I mean, Everything was just in desperate need of assistance. They even had oceanfront erosion and jetty repairs. All this stuff added up to about $100 million in need. So with that as a start, how would you like to take that on? They had a nonprofit called the Ocean Shores Development Association. And it was all volunteers. It was registered. The city would give them $7,000 to $20,000 a year, and they'd run ads trying to get new hotels. I mean, even their motels were like 1960s motels. I mean, it was really sad. And they were running all these ads trying to get economic development. And of course, there wasn't really any success at all. And they needed help, and they needed it pronto. So guess what? I got the call. And I was asked to go out there and meet with the city manager, who is Mike Pence. And yes, this is a different Mike Pence than the one you know. And he's now in Montana. But Mike said, would you come out and tell us what we need to do? So I went out to Ocean Shores. I was living in Seattle at the time, and I went out there and I said, well, tell me what the makeup of the board is. And they said, well, we have 20 people on the board. They agreed it wasn't really a good mix. A big challenge was it was kind of a good old boys network. And even Mike said, we go to meetings for the sake of meetings, but we're not really getting anything done. And so I went to the city and the city council, and my job was to recruit investment into Ocean Shores. We needed tax base. Grants would not fix everything. We needed tax base. We needed to pull this town out of the 1960s. So I went to the city council in closed session to negotiate my agreement, because I was going to take a 3 or 4 year leave from this business to go out there. And I told him, I said, I need to spend 80% of my time recruiting investment into Ocean Shores. And I'm going to need this board to run the organization. Otherwise, I'm going to spend 80% of my time running the organization, only 20% of my time recruiting. And I said, and I got to reduce this down to like 9 board members. I mean, really dealing with 20 board members? No wonder you never get anything done. And I said, and by the way, we need to get everybody on the same page, pulling in the same direction. The city council and the city said, agreed. If you do this, we will fund the organization enough to cover your costs. And so we want you to go meet with the board and tell them exactly what you need for you to be successful. So I went to their board and we had a wild conversation, and I introduced myself. I'm Roger Brooks. Here's my goals. Here's my mission. And then I asked, who's going to run this organization? And they said, well, you are. I said, no, I'm going to go out there and recruit. That's the mission of this organization, is to get new tax base invested into Ocean Shores, primarily in the private sector commercial development. And they said, so I need to know who's going to run the organization. I need to know, is the secretary going to take the minutes? Is the chair going to organize the meetings? Who's going to take care of the finances? I need the board to run the organization. It's not part-time, only take a couple hours a month maybe. And almost everybody on the board says, well, you know what, we thought you were going to do all of that. We all have other jobs. We all have other responsibilities. And I told them, and I have to get past the politics of any personal agendas or anything. And basically about half of them quit right there on the spot, which was perfect, because then we were able to reorchestrate the board. And so I actually got people to say, Roger, you're exactly right. I'm willing to resign. And so I put together a new board that would include the people I needed to be successful recruiting development. Now remember, that was our focus of this organization. The focus might change in a year, and then in that case, we'll change the board. But for right now, I wanted the city manager on there. That's the guy who writes the checks. That's the one who approves any grants that go out. And then we put the mayor on there. And then we had another council. They had 5 people on their council, so we had 2 of them and the city manager on this. Then we put the town's planning director on this, because if we're going to bring in commercial development, I need the planning director involved. And then, you know what, we're going to need financing. So I got the local bank president and the branch manager to come in on this board, because these people probably want financing. And then I got 2 hoteliers, that because this is all about tourism. This is a beach town. And I'm going to be bringing them in competition, so they need to be on the board. There's a convention center, so I put the director on the board, and then the Chamber of Commerce director. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people on our board. Now, one mistake we made in this makeup that you see right here, this is made so I could recruit economic. The one thing I didn't do was I should have had a citizen at large on this board. Somebody that's not interested in development. It might be somebody retired, doesn't even want to see growth. I should have brought them in and made them part of the board, but I didn't. I just wanted to cut to the chase. And from that, I learned a valuable lesson that rule number 1 is bring your enemies into camp. And rule number 2 is keep your friends close, but keep your enemies even closer. Because what happened is after we started recruiting new development into Ocean Shores, an organization popped up called the Citizens for Responsive Government, because the city, the council, and we were all recruiting tax base so we could fix the sewer systems, the streets, and everything that needed to be done. But because we had no liaison to that general public out there that moved there, and once they moved there wanted to shut it off, we ran into problems down the road. And so, I think this is a really important lesson. Now, our big deal is you build your board to accomplish your goals for this year. And you know what? I said it before, I'm going to say it again. If the priorities are different the following year, then you orchestrate a new board. And what you do is tell your board members, hey, your job is to work yourselves off the board. My job was to work myself out of a job because I wanted to go back to my other business. Now, for most of you, I'm not asking you to work yourself out of the job, but your board could be different. So if in a year I recruit what they want, maybe the next year we have a board that's more focused on marketing so that we could keep these people alive. And so we told the board right up front that they would shift, even members of the board would shift, so that we'd have expertise and support where we needed it for the organization to achieve its goals. And those goals might change every year. Now, in addition to the board, I created a development team. So these are not board members, but I said if we're going to bring in development, once again, I need to have the city manager, I should have the mayor there, I should have the planning director there, I should also have the finance director there because we might be applying for grants. There might be some funding, some business improvement district funding. I thought it would be good if we had the fire chief there because they've got to approve any plans for new hotels and restaurants and things. We brought the police chief in there. I mean, we brought the bank president. And we brought in a real estate representative that was a specialist in commercial real estate. So this wasn't our board, but this is the team I worked with outside of the board when we started recruiting development, because I knew I was going to need to have somebody in real estate there. And so, one person in real estate named Jim Donahoe, we're still great friends. He stepped up and said, this is what I do. I'd love to be part of it. And we made a huge difference. Now, one thing you need to know about boards is that organizations that have a paid staff, this was a huge survey done, that only 20% were satisfied with their boards, 20%. And only 48% were somewhat satisfied. That is not very good. So I want to talk to you about chambers of commerce, because I know many of you are chambers of commerce, and I call this the chamber conundrum. First of all, chambers of commerce were organized to be the lobbying organization for local business. But the problem is We're also doing networking events because our members want to network with each other. Most people join a chamber because they think they can get business from other chamber members. They organize their annual meetings or banquets. They provide visitor information services and tourism. Chambers of commerce are fairly constant, so visitors automatically call them. And then we say, well, we're going to produce marketing, we're going to produce and market festivals, events. Then many get into the world of economic development, and of course, many do tourism marketing and promotion. And then they say, oh, and we're going to work with other local nonprofits, whether it's a school or a hospital or an arts or cultural organization, historical societies. And you know what? Look at this. This is quite the workload. And this is why the average chamber director lasts just 30 months. Here's the problem. Is the average chamber director spends 80% of his or her time raising money and dealing with membership issues, and only 20% of their time is dedicated for lobbying for local business with, zoning and all of those kinds of things. Or they have 20% to do networking events and annual meetings, 20% of their time for visitor information services. They got to produce all these events and everything. And you know what it takes to produce events? And then they're doing this. I mean, they have 20% of their time to do all this other stuff. That's like 1 day a week. How can you be successful? And so, first of all, I tell destination marketing organizations, I don't care whether it's a chamber or a standalone, eliminate your memberships, for crying out loud. You know what? You may say, but we make most of our money on memberships. Well, you know what? You will be way more effective without memberships, and you could do a lot more if you had more time to do things that don't cost a lot of money. And so I always say you got to spend your time fulfilling the goal of the organization rather than managing the organization and going out and dealing with membership issues and fundraising. So even with chambers of commerce, I say you need to narrow your focus. Is your focus tourism? Is your focus just going to be networking for local business? Pick one thing and concentrate on it. And then get a board that agrees with you. And that's what you need to do. And so, here are the role your board members should be playing. First of all, they are the public face of the organization. They are your chief cheerleaders. They are your fundraisers. They are your strategic planners. This is the role of them. When you go before an organization and ask for money, they see you pitching for your own paycheck. They need to be pitching for your paycheck. They need to be the public face. You're the person that's going to go out there and accomplish the goals of the organization. These are the people that need to be your booster club. And the other thing that you need to know about your board is their job is to set policy, not micromanaging the organization. Their job is to set policy. Their job is like in Ocean Shores. It's, Roger, we want you to go out there and recruit commercial development to Ocean Shores. And we even develop a list of them of what specifically I was going to recruit. And so they didn't say, Roger, we want to host some local events. We want you to do a bunch of marketing and advertising. They said, let's narrow our focus and you just go for it. And I had a board that trusted me. Roger, you go for it. We're going to run the organization. You go for it. And I met with them once a month. I told them here's where we had successes. Here's where I needed help. And we were all on the same page, pulling in the same direction. I love this quote by Warren Bennis, who said, leaders are people who do the right things. That's your board. Managers, you are the people who do things right. That's a great quote for all of you to use. And so, what are the expectations of your board members? You know what? Number one, they need to be passionate. They need to be an active and vocal advocate for the mission of the organization. They're passionate. I mean, you could probably tell I'm a little bit passionate about this topic. You know, they will work with other board members. You have to be on the same page, pulling in the same direction. It's like a marriage. And then they need to regularly attend board and committee meetings. If they don't, they need to be willing to resign. They need to be prepared for meetings. And they will help support charitable contributions. That means fundraising. And they may have personal contacts that you could use. So if I was dealing with Jim in real estate in Ocean Shores, he may say, Roger, I've got a good person that works in the mortgage industry or another bank we can talk to. And so even your board members may be saying, well, gee, we could leverage some of our personal contacts. And they may serve as a committee, on a committee, or as a chair. And they will work with leadership staff. That means they'll work with you, and they're there to help you, not tell you what to do. And here's the deal. If they are unable to accomplish these things on this list, they need to be willing to step down. And that is really important. If they know this going in, it's way easier for you to deal with your boards. And here's the scoop. They should expect to spend 4 to 8 hours a month dedicated to the mission of the organization. So now, let's say you have a monthly board meeting. That might be 2 hours. But beyond 2 hours, the other 2 hours to 8 hours might be going in talking to a city council meeting or a Kiwanis club or a Rotary club or a school board about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. So one thing we're going to give you as part of the handout for this presentation is what you can expect. I think this was really a great little sheet that talked about what you expect from them. And if you could give something like this, you could put your own logo on it. I would always give Simone credit for this, but I would absolutely give your board members this so they understand what they're coming into. The last thing you need is board members just because they want to be board members. So there are the expectations of your board and what their responsibilities are. So now let's craft the perfect board. First of all, this is a team. This is the Let's Make Something Happen team. And so in O'Shores, I had that board, and every month they say, what can we do to help, Roger? What can we do to help? And they said, okay, what if we do this? Hey, I've got a contact over here. Every one of us was about making something happen, accomplishing that goal of that year. Okay? And by the way, I love this. Unity is strength. When there's teamwork and collaboration, wonderful things can be achieved. I mean, this is team. Your board and you need to be joined at the hip. Together we achieve more. So first of all, the big deal is unity of your board. And you can get unity when you narrow your focus and you have an outcome that's other than just running the organization. This year, we want to accomplish this, and we, the board, and me, the director, we're going to go do it. Number 2, never more than 13 people on your board. I always believe 7 to 9 is best. Now, somebody will say, well, why don't we have just 3 or 5, or even 7? You know what? You do need a booster club. You do need Pied Pipers out there. So you need to have plenty of people out there that might be connected to school districts or cities or counties or states or provinces or other local organizations that are tied into whatever your organization is charged with. So I like 9 to 13. I love those numbers. It gives you enough out there. And by the way, you notice these are all odd numbers. So if the board has to vote on something, there's not somebody trying to break a tie. And so this is a good size. The second you get over 13 people, I mean, half of them won't ever speak. And then you just have meetings for the sake of meetings and you can't get anything done. I mean, it's tough enough to go with 9 to 13 people getting stuff done, but limit the number of people on your board. If you're a municipal-based organization like tourism, a destination marketing organization, economic development, a historical society, a downtown association, an arts alliance or group, this would be just an ideal board. And by the way, this doesn't have to be set in stone. You can do this. But I always say you should have a city manager, a chief administrative officer, a city administrator, because they're the ones who run the day-to-day business of a city. So if you're in municipal, if it's a county, it might be a county manager or a county executive. And so you have that person there. And then you should have somebody that, whether it's a city, a mayor, a council representative, or a county commissioner, or a county selectman. I mean, they change by state and province. You should have them on there because you know what? Sometimes they're the voice to the rest of their council, and they're your advocate to those council. These people do talk offline, so you need to have them. I would have 3 brand champions. If you're in, you know what? If you decide, hey, we're going to be the biking capital of Alberta, which Devon did, then you say, now we need to get 3 people that absolutely love biking because we need more trails. We need better signage on our trails. Whatever your brand is, and you know, you may say, hey, our brand is healthy living. Then get people that are championing healthy living. So whatever it is your focus, the industry you're in, then you need brand champions. So back to Ocean Shores, they wanted to recruit some new hotels, some flagship. They had no-name hotels. That's why we had a couple of hotel people on there. And so, and of course, we had the convention center manager. It was all about tourism, so we made sure we had those champions there. And then, you know what? I love having somebody from the press. You know, and that press could be an online blog. It could be if you're a big enough city or organization that you have a public information officer. It could be somebody from a local newspaper, preferably the editor, because you need to have the press there. I mean, because people will always be against everything you're doing. I mean, you can't get away from the cavers, citizens against virtually everything. So what you do is by having somebody there that's on your board, then they can help educate the public. You're not asking them to take a stand or to be, not say things that are controversial. You just need to have a voice out there to the public, and they can help. And then maybe you have one from partnering organization, whether it's Chamber of Commerce, whether it's a hospital board, a school board, what am I thinking? Historical Society, an Arts Commission, you name it. Okay, they're your partners. And then here's that one at-large member that you need to have. It could be somebody that's generally negative about what you're trying to accomplish, or somebody that's just really indifferent, but they're curious about you, because they also talk to people. And I think that's really important. And then maybe 2 to 4 with specific areas of expertise. So for instance, I had a bank president and I had a commercial real estate person on our board, because I knew we were going to get into real estate transactions and financing. Now, these 2 I put in blue, and the reason is they may not even be on your board. They just may be people like I did on the development team. So they could be a volunteer, they could be contracted, they might show up at some board meetings. If you have areas of expertise you want to talk about, that's their area of expertise. So this is just kind of a good general idea of what your makeup of a board would be. And once again, we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people on this one. Okay? So that's number 1. That's the makeup of your board. Number 2 is keep it young. I mean, you know what? The millennials, it doesn't matter what organization you're in, you are charting the future of your community or of the area. And so I always say you need to bring your millennials on board. Now, millennials were basically born between 1980 and 1999. Some people say 1984. It doesn't really matter, but these are just young people, from 20 to maybe 40-ish. There are a huge number of them in the U.S. and Canada. As a matter of fact, 12,000 people a day turn 21. This is the biggest generation yet in the U.S. and Canada, and probably even in Western Europe. They're the best educated generation in history. They are also the most diverse generation, which is awesome. And here's the big deal. They are the most civically minded generation in history. As a matter of fact, there are more mayors right now under the age of 35 in the U.S. and Canada than at any one point in time, period, history. And, us boomers, we grew up and we were, down with the establishment. This group is very civically minded And you know what? Your job is to keep them in your communities without them after high school saying, hey, the second I graduate, I'm bailing from this town. So make sure, if you can, is have millennials in those categories, if you can, as part of your team. Because the future of your organization, sooner or later, is going to rest in their hands, not yours. This is where you mentor them along. This is where they learn about you. This is where they can offer input. And so if you can, keep it young. Now, does that mean you can't have anybody over the age of 40? Of course not. You might have 2/3 of your organization over 30 or half. But or over 40. But the challenge is, I want you to keep it young. You got to break the good old boys network of business as usual. Number 3, these are doers, not directors. They will dedicate time and effort to the cause. Just like I told you with my experience, when I said, who's going to take the minutes? Who's going to organize the meetings? Who's going to, organize the annual banquet? Who's going to take care of getting memberships or fundraising? And you know what? Half of them quit. Great. Well, I loaded the board with a bunch of doers. And most of their doing, by the way, was furthering my goal of recruiting development. They weren't just doers in the fact that they're going to run the organization. They did run the organization. That might have taken an hour a month. It's really not that hard of a deal to run an organization. But most of their doing was helping me. And that's what I loved. And number 4, they are great ambassadors. They are your sales force. Now, not everybody on your board is going to be a root 'em like I do. I'm probably the biggest cheerleader out there. But not all of them are going to be happy to go in front of an audience. They get nervous. They may be some that are incredible for research and other things you need, but you do need to have some people on your board that can go out there and pitch for you. They're pitching for money. They're helping you sell. They're doing everything they can. They're ambassadors for you. And when I say sell, I'm talking about convincing your local stakeholders, your local citizens. If you're a membership organization, you're selling what you're doing to your members. You always have to keep people pumped up. And so what you do with this, with your ambassadors, your sales force, is you have to fit the role that fits each personality on your board. You're going to end up with, for instance, a city manager, a CAO, and you know what? You don't have a choice of how old they are, whether they're really good in front of people or whether they're more technical. As long as they're on the same page with you, great. Okay? Now, number 5, they should be respected locally. They carry some weight or influence in the community. In Ocean Shores, we did that. So if there's a council representative that actually carries a little more weight or is liked more universally locally, I would pick them plus your mayor. And so as long as you get people that are respected locally, sometimes I'll see a university president on there or just somebody that carries some weight because it gives you some clout as an organization. They go, whoa. I remember back in the 70s, there was I think it was an investment company called E.F. Hutton. And they ran these commercials. They said, when E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. And that is what you want. You want a couple of people that are respected locally on your board because they carry some weight, and that means influence. And number 6, it is so important that this entire board is focused on the outcome, not the organization. Your board should be dedicated to the goal and mission of your organization specifically for that year. Some of you have the same goal. It's been there for 20 years. Fine. But you could take sub-goals on that and say, this year we're going to do a sub-goal on that, and next year we're going to do a different one. But you want to make sure they are focused on the outcome, not, we want you on the board because you're used to running nonprofit organizations. Wrong. So, as you look for board members, here's what I look for. I want to find out from each one of them what motivates them. So it doesn't mean they have to be a great motivator. I want to find out what motivates you. What's your comfort level with this subject, with our topic, what we're trying to do? So when I was looking for board members, I didn't tell them I was interviewing them, but I'd say, hey, let's go to lunch sometime. And I would just talk to them. So what are you doing? What do you think? What are your, and they didn't realize they were going through an interview process. So I actually would go out there and I had lunch with most council members and I would go to lunch or I'd be at dinner or we'd just be in a public setting and everything. And I would find out what motivates them. What's their comfort level? And then once you have them on your board, it's really important to invite them into the conversations. Sometimes board members will be pretty quiet and they just sit there and they never speak up. So I always made a point at every single board meeting to ask them, so what do you think? And I would ask them, so what do you think? Would you weigh in? And you know what? Their participation will go up. They will be a bigger champion for you. So it's very, very important. And then I always watch out for board members that have an agenda that doesn't align with you. Some of them say, well, I need to get on their board because, I really disagree with what they're doing. And if I can sneak on the inside, kind of the spy motive, But sometimes you ask what motivates them. Sometimes you'll hear some things. You need to invite them in the conversation and find out what motivates them. And then you need to be able to delegate them. Once you find out these things, you find out whether they're outspoken, whether they tend to be a little more introverted. And now that you get to know them as people, they become your friends. And now you can match them with different tasks. Okay? And then finally, you've got to make sure they're a fit to accomplish your goals. Whatever it is, whether say, boy, I need somebody that could work on a community profile. So when we're recruiting economic development, we want a community profile. It talks about the weather. It talks about retail sales. It talks about seasonal tourism. It talks about the number of hotel rooms, in this case of Ocean Shores. And so I always wanted to make sure that they would fit one of these little roles, these tasks. So there you go. Motivation, participation, delegation, and results. Now, that is a perfect board. And if you can orchestrate that board, it will be amazing. Now, many of you have ineffective boards. You hate to admit it, but it's true. And I will give you one case history. We're working in the beautiful, beautiful town, historic town of Flemington, New Jersey. They had a downtown association. If I remember right, there was like 24 people on their board. And I said, look, you guys got to narrow this down. It had a huge number of people on their board. And I said, can you narrow it down to like 11, even 13? And so they started to do that. And then it started creating sniping among each other. Well, you should quit. No, you should quit. And then we found out that people had differing opinions, and there was sniping in the board. And you know what? We were there working with the borough, which is their city. We were working with the borough of Flemington, but our goal was to work with the downtown association. Our contract was with the borough. Our project was downtown. And we're going through all of this, and you know what's happened? The board director got booted out. The board just was fighting so much. It was like, we felt like we're at some kind of wrestling match. And you know what happened is? The borough took away all of their funding and just created a new organization where they could all be on the same page, pulling in the same direction. It was really, really, really sad. And you know what? The bottom line is the top killer of nonprofit organizations is internal politics at the board level. Right there. Internal politics at the board level. The number one killer or lack of success of any organization. I put nonprofits, but I got to tell you, this is even true in profit companies. So, if you need to, get somebody from the outside with no skin in the game to reorganize your board from the ground up. That can actually come in there. And that's exactly what in Ocean Shores, I went to the city and said, if you want to contract with me, this board has way too many people. They need to be running it. I need to spend 80% of my time. And so I went to a board and told them that, and half of them resigned, and the other half said, no, Roger, we understand where you're going. I'm happy to resign. When you find, when your goals change, always count me in, because here's my area of expertise. And when you do that, it's not a personal agenda that you're trying to get rid of people. You're doing it because you're trying to fit the alignment. They're your team. This is like a basketball team or a football team. If you don't get the right chemistry and the right makeup of these different positions, you can't succeed. So, once you've got your board, now what? First of all, board turnover. You know what? I always say you should add a new board member every 2 years. Now, I've worked with boards. When I was in North Shores, we pretty much had the same board for all 4 years of my project because they were such a good team. We did take off. 1 or 2 people said, okay, we don't need the fire chief and the planning director now because we recruited it and replaced them with people with marketing. So that's where we added a new board member every 2 years, because what you don't want is your whole board to change over every 2 years. We've seen these where you say, well, this year we're replacing 3 board members, next year replacing 3 more, the next year replacing 3 more, and you have a constant training session. You're constantly trying to orchestrate your board. You're spending more time educating new boards and bringing them in and getting the chemistry to work right. So you know what? 1 board member every 2 years. So after a dozen years, you finally got a whole new board. But you know what? And by the way, you probably wouldn't have a new board because you may have one person that comes in for a couple of years and then is off. But I always think 2 years, they should be, re-voted in by the rest of the board, or at least talked to about their role and what their contribution is. So I'm just not a big fan of changing an entire board if you've got an effective one. And so, what I always do is you and your board chair should take the lead in orchestrating your board mix and finding appropriate candidates. If you're new to an area, and this is something you just do one-on-one with your board chair and say, okay, we're going to have an opening next year. Who do you think? And of course, your other board members will provide input as well. And what you have to do is you start with on our to-do list for next year. So like 8 months into your year, you're going to already say, well, next year our main goal will be this. Or it may be a continuation. It took me 2 years to do all the recruitment, so I didn't change the board for 2 years. But when you do that, then what you can do is you tell your board that next year our focus is going to be a little bit different. Is there anybody here who would be willing to resign their position? I love that little girl. Resign their position so that you could make room for somebody with that expertise. And sometimes people are just burned out. Sometimes they have life challenges. Sometimes they're moving in a different direction. And sometimes you may have to have the board chair pull somebody aside and said, I'm really sorry. And you do this one-on-one. I'm really sorry. But you know what? You only attended half the meetings. And I'm really asking, I hope that you'll resign so that we don't come down to a vote. We really, really appreciate everything you've done. And you know what? I've had no problem doing this. It's never easy. It's like if you have an employee that doesn't cut their weight, you have to let them go. There's nothing worse to do, but you got to treat your board that way. And then number 2 is define the roles. So every board probably should have a secretary. That person take minutes at every meeting. You might have a person, I call them the attendance chief. They're the ones that send out emails. Here's when we're going to meet, the time, the date. They're the ones that orchestrate the meetings. They even help orchestrate invitations to like annual meetings or banquets or whatever. You will have a finance director. When I work for organizations, I don't want to sit there and run the books. I want to go do what I do. And by the way, even as an executive director, I've seen boards, as a matter of fact, even in my case, I worked myself out of that job in 4 years, and they got in a new executive director that was geared more to marketing because I was in recruitment. See what I mean? And I knew it. In my case, I was working myself out of a job, and I knew it. But a finance director, they run the money. They handle that. Then you might have an annual events director. You might have a fundraising director. And here's one, I always think you should have a person dedicated to PR. They're the ones watching Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and, Pinterest and YouTube and everything. They're the ones that's outreach. They're talking to the press. They're talking to locals. They're attending meetings to educate them about what you're doing. Okay? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically 6 different jobs of those 9 to 11 people you have. And you know what? Each one of these, for most organizations, could be done in an hour a month. And then the rest of their volunteer time is helping you accomplish your goal. Now, out of this, you might also have 3 committees. Particularly if you're economic development. In our case, we need somebody marketing. If we're going to bring in those businesses, we got to make sure they're successful. Product development, which is, we had a lot of old mom and pop 60s hotels. We need to work with them as we brought in new hotels so they could upgrade their properties. Because we don't want them to go away. A couple of them sat on our board. We want them to invest in their property because we're probably going to bring in a higher income visitor in our case. And then you might have a brand ambassador, whether it's biking, whether it's, whatever your brand is, antiques, it doesn't matter. You need to have somebody that's passionate about whatever your brand is as a community, as an organization. Okay? Brand ambassador, that's your goal. Whatever your goal is as an organization, they are ambassadors for it. And they might have 1, 2, 3, they might have, and by the way, some of these committees can have people that are not on your board. They're other volunteers in marketing. It might be an ad agency or PR firm or a social media expert or graphic design, brand ambassador. If you're a quilting destination, it might be somebody that has a quilt shop, somebody that runs a quilt club, whatever it is. And so these committees don't always have to be made up of board members and staff, but if you have more than a 1-person staff, you're probably going to be involved. If you're only a 1-person staff, you might be involved in all 3 of these committees because you're the one that has to, they're helping you succeed. Okay? And meetings, by the way, if you did a 1-hour board meeting a month and then a 1 hour for each of these committees to meet, yes, this is why I said I would spend 80% of my time recruiting and 20% of my time doing exactly this, working with my committees, working with them and the board. Got it? So there you go. Now, once a year, you should have a strategic planning retreat. That is where you sit down for a full day with your board and you sit down and you might rewrite your bylaws. You know what? If you say right now, our bylaws say we have 25 board members, we need to cut it down to 11, and we're only going to have 1 meeting a month, you might need to go and change your bylaws. You do this at that retreat. Okay? And there's going to be more to the retreat. I'm going to tell you how that'll work here. But I love this quote as well. It says, boards that are able to function effectively as a team have an 800% greater impact on profitability or achieving your goals, you could put that there, than any one well-qualified board member. In other words, and consistent with Aristotle's observation, the whole is greater than the sum of all its parts. And so this is so important. So what you do at that retreat is you say, what are the 10 things we want to be accomplished this year? Now, in my case, it was recruitment. What are the 10 things we wanted to recruit? By the way, you might have 3. It doesn't have to be 10. Don't go over 10. If you finish the 10 in 3 months, then great. Have another retreat and do another 10. But I always say, what are the things we want to accomplish this year? And by priority. Because you as a director are going to be judged on whether you're able to accomplish it, and your board is going to be judged on it, and your funding will be judged on it. But you could have 5, you could have 1 thing. In my case, we had 1 thing was recruiting commercial development, and we had top 10 things we're going to go recruit. So 1 major goal is just fine, but orchestrate your board to get it done, right? And you do this at the board retreat. And while you're there, you develop an action plan, how to get the list implemented. Okay, so we're going to recruit hotel developers. What do I need? Well, I need a community profile. I probably need a quick little economic profile. I don't need a bunch of studies and stuff. I needed marketing materials that I could use. And then I thought, number 2 is I need to go find out what kind of hotels do we want? What kind of hotels will come here? Or restaurants or retail shops, you name it. We needed activity vendors. And then what we did all this in 1 day. It's cool because we're 1 team. And then you create committees out of that and say, okay, would you handle this part, those marketing materials you need? Would you help me work on a database of people we're going to recruit? So that's what our teams did. So Obviously, you give that committee a name, like I said, what I call them, the attendance chief, but this would be a committee like recruitment committee, but you can make it fun. This isn't, I think sometimes our board meetings, things are so overly formal. It's like, please give me a break, and so give the committee a name, and they'll have a specific set of tasks and a specific goal. And then you can invite the non-board members to come in and be part of those committees. And don't overburden your board members. If you have too many committees, I think 3 or 4 max is plenty of committees. Otherwise, you spend all of your time in committees and you're eroding away that 80% you want to spend on accomplishing the goals. And you don't want to overburden your board members to where they're burned out. They're putting in more than that, 4 to 8 hours a month. And so just take it slower and easier if you have to. Don't bite off more than you can chew. And then just remember the time commitment. Remember, they're volunteers. And so if you have to, bring in outside volunteers to help get things done. I love that. You have more Pied Pipers that way. And then the other thing I want you to do is make sure you invite open, candid conversations. There's nothing worse than meetings after the meetings where they're talking behind closed doors about you or other board members. You need to say, look, just spill it out. Wear your feelings on your sleeve. Let's spit it out. It's just like if you have a brother or a sister, you may have times where you disagree on things, but you know what? You just spit it out and you get it over with. And I think it's so important to have candid conversations. In the organizations I've been involved with, we will actually help orchestrate those and then we facilitate them. And in the organization I was in, I said, if any of you has a problem with it, just say it. You're not going to hurt my feelings. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing. So here's the big deal. Do not involve the board in your day-to-day management. Because if you do say, well, what do you all think I need to hire somebody? What do you all think we want to move into a new office? What do you think we need a new computer or a new copy machine? A printer. If you get your whole board involved in this, they're going to be micromanaging the operation. Don't do that. Have them keep their eye on the goal, right? However, when you have those things, that's what you and your board chair do. They're that too. So if you're going to move to a new office, you're going to go do something that's about the organization, you want to you want to go to an annual conference or something, that is where you talk to your board chair. And if your board chair needs to bring it up at a board meeting, fine. But don't get everybody micromanaging your organization. You're just going to erode that 80%. I'm going to keep coming back to that. And then when you hold your monthly meetings, they need to be effective. You can see the people here. They're like, okay, we're just going over and over charts and it's the same old. We're reading our minutes, anything new, old business, new business. We're doing all that. And I hate all that. It's super structured. What are you trying to accomplish? Just cut to the chase. So when you do your monthly meetings, I always believe an hour is plenty. And if you can do it in a brown bag lunch, something that's casual, remember, you want to be friends. So what you do is the first thing is, how are we doing? And that's where boards will say, well, here's the secretary will read the minutes. Our finance director will say this. Our membership, if you have memberships, which I hope you don't. Chambers have no choice. That's what they're about. But board position reports. This whole thing should take no more than 15 minutes. Okay, how are we doing? And then what's new? And this is where you or me, the executive director, would go in and say, here's what we accomplished this last month. Isn't this cool? Or here's where we're having a little bit of a challenge. And you know what? That might be 15 minutes at the most, because let's just not rehash stuff. So now we're into it half an hour. Then committees. How are we doing on marketing? Did you get the brochure done? Or how are we doing on this? Remember, we're not talking about annual banquets and stuff. That's up there in the board position stuff. But progress. How are we doing on marketing or product development? Whatever it is your committees are, each one of those might be 5 minutes. And then what you can do is there's 15 minutes. And then you might say, okay, what's coming this month? And that might be in those committee reports. So that 15 minutes, and then sometimes, I always like boards that bring in somebody from outside. You might, if you don't bring in somebody from the outside, you just have, if any of you ever belong to Kiwanis or Rotary, every month they meet and they have a speaker that speaks for like 20 minutes. I just think sometimes you can show a really fun video that's on YouTube or something. It might be poking fun at a different community. It might be poking fun at you. It might be marketing. You might have somebody come in from another town and say, here's what we did, and you don't have to pay for these. I've actually done these. I said, Roger, if you're in town and you're speaking, we'd like to organize our board meeting. So when you're in town, you could come and speak to us for 15, 20 minutes. This is where you have some levity. So it's not depressing. It's fun. And it's a pump up the troops 15 minutes. That is a good board meeting right there. Now, sometimes you say this time we have to tackle a big project, and so we're going to dispense with all the board position reports and what's new and progress. We're going to spend 45 minutes on that, and then we're going to do our little pump up the troops or the executive director report. That's how you should do your meetings. Cut to the chase, brevity, 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 and then make something happen. This is so important as an organization. If you want funding, if you want to be vibrant, if you want people to want to be on your board because you're all about making something happen, this is so important. So, you know what? Let me tell you what happened in Ocean Shores. I was there for 4 years, and during this 4 years, the first 2 years I was heavily recruiting, then we were marketing. And by the way, once we started getting going on our recruiting, all of a sudden more came in all by themselves. Now, I want to tell you, I'm not doing this to brag about how good I am at recruiting because I don't even do this anymore. But it's because I was able to spend 80% of my time recruiting. That was my job. So whatever your job is, it might be totally different. That we were able to land a $15 million Shiloh Inn Convention Center resort right on the beach. $15 million. This is the first time they had a new hotel in like 30 years. We even convinced that Shiloh Inn to do a one property business improvement district and there was no sidewalks in this beach town. So they put in sidewalks all along in front of their property, which was 600 feet long. We recruited a Best Western Lighthouse Suites Inn, $3.5 million. It was the first time they had a chain hotel anywhere in this area. So we got them, and they built right on the beach. They've actually expanded it. Then we brought in a new Comfort Inn. So we had some name hotels coming in. A new Holiday Inn Express came in. It is now it's called the Morning Glory Hotel, but it came in. A Days Inn came in. And by the way, those are all our mid-price hotels. All of a sudden there was name brand recognition. And what happened, those 60s and 70s mom and pop hotels, they started to upgrade their properties because they had to compete. And we even had them on our board, so they got it. They understood what we were trying to do. We recruited in the Judith Ann Inn, a beautiful, beautiful, stunning 5-star B&B. The Caroline Inn, which is right on a bluff overlooking the ocean. It's like Gone with the Wind, a huge, beautiful. And then, even these are like timeshares. The one on the right is brand new. They spent millions upgrading their properties. We were the first town in the United States to have an end-of-the-road first-run movie theater. You can tell how old I took this picture. Shrek 2, how long ago was that? But the point is, out here in this end-of-the-road little beach town, we had a first-run movie theater that had 4 theater screens in it. We recruited a $2.5 million Pacific Paradise miniature golf course. And this is not a cheesy golf course. This has incredible water features, boats, you name it. It's stunning. We worked and helped recruit the Quinault Indian Nation Quinault Beach Resort. This is a $50 million Indian gaming resort casino. Incredible. And we saw a new home start every 4 days, and that's been going on for more than 10 years running. So here's the bottom line. The city of Ocean Shore saw more new tax base in this 4-year program and in the previous 25 years combined. And it's not because I'm some super salesman. It's because I had a board and me and a good real estate partner to work with, Jim Donahoe, that it was conquer the world. And with that tax base, we saw $45 million sewer-wide sewer system installed. New library, a new police station, new fire equipment. Their trucks weren't even certified to go above 2 stories. We recruited 4-story hotels. I mean, we had a new multi-million-dollar golf course clubhouse. $6 million in street and bridge replacement projects, $14 million convention center. One of the state's top emergency medical service there. And then millions and millions of dollars in other upgrades and improvements. And we're talking about for the locals, not just in the private sector. And you know what? When you see what happened for the city, this is what the direct cash from just these 2 projects, Shiloh and the Best Western, just these 2 added $105,000 a year in property taxes. Look at this in lodging taxes. This is in Washington, they have a business and occupation tax, a sales taxes generated. Utility taxes. The city of Ocean Shore saw $400,000 a year just on the recruitment of those. And they funded this organization, I think, like $100,000 a year. So the city, even today, all these years later, is seeing a 600% annual return on that investment. Now, for some of you, you're not in recruitment, so it's not so black and white as this. It might be healthy living. Are you getting people to lose weight? Are you getting people to live longer? You need to have these kinds of goals, and when you accomplish them, everybody is going to be on your side. They want to be on your board. They love a team that's doing this. And guess what? After all that development and all that money, and they did all of those things, here's the real clincher. They still have one of the state's lowest tax rates because the commercial development carried the weight. We didn't rely on the residents to carry everything. So why it worked was, number one, I was able to spend 80% of my time. I'm going to just keep pounding that in because it is so important. And then number two, they trusted me to do my job. Just make it happen. I'll never forget, I had a hotel that said, Roger, when are you getting a hotel? When are you getting a hotel? It took me like 10 months to get the first one because I had to convince them that we were going to do something in this little 2-bit town that people referred to as open source. Yeah, you heard that right. And then, so I brought the first one. We got the Shiloh, we got the Best Western, we got the Days Inn. That same director, so he said, when are you going to get that hotel? We got to get that hotel. We need more funding. We need that hotel. About 6 months later, said, Roger, would you stop bringing in hotels? There's too many hotels. That was a good transition to make. And you know what? The board ran the organization. They championed the cause. They did the outreach. They pitched for the funding to pay me. They were incredibly unified and focused. And their whole thing is, what can we do to help? And they knew that their job was to work themselves off the board. And they felt proud when they were saying, well, you know what? I accomplished my mission on the board. This is so awesome. And 100% of them believed 100% in what we were doing. We were a team, not a director and a board. And finally, this is my life's quote, my life's motto. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. Ralph Waldo Emerson. And you know what? You may say, well, gee, I'm the executive director, and I'm not a Roger Brooks that can go out there and pump up the troops and do motivational. Well, get somebody on your board that can. All you need is one. And that's what you need to do. So, in closing, here is to making your organization an amazing success. It is so important that you have an effective board. And so you know what? You might go through hell changing your board, but once you make that transition, I'm telling you, the sailing will be clear. You will have no problem getting money. You will have no problem accomplishing your goals, and your job will be fun. We don't like it when executive directors last 30 months because they're burned out, or they were said, well, you never did your job because they were doing 50 different functions in 8 hours a week. And so with that, here's to all the best for you and your organization. Thank you.